Hello, everybody. My name is Arnaud Dubin, and I am working as Business Development Director for KPM Technology, and more precisely in charge of the Chopin brand of products. Today, my talk in the next 10 to 15 minutes will be about how can we ensure proper dough quality when we are a baker. And the whole thing is about to try to understand how the flour and the dough and the final product are working together. So let's start here with this first thing. The first thing is about um, analyzing the market, if we can say. I have been traveling and visiting a lot of bakers worldwide. And every time I was asking this question about, okay, do you have flour specification? And if yes, do you still experience issues during the production? And I always have the same kind of answer. The answer is yes. So we decided to make a real, more serious survey on that. And you can see the type of question we have here. So does it happen that flour, despite meeting all laboratory specifications, still give issues? And the findings here were that 96% of bakers, they said, yes, it happened. We have specifications. Sometimes they control, sometimes they do not control. But in any case, even if we have specification of flour, and if the flour we receive is matching the specification, we are still experiencing more or less issues, sometimes very serious ones. And it was interesting to see that the 4% answering "no, it never happens" were academic people, which they are maybe too far from the market and to the way of doing product. Sometimes they do not realize that the link between flour specification, flour quality, and final product is not that easy. So that's the first thing. First fact: 96% of the bakers still experience problems. The second series of facts is that we are working today in a very rapidly changing environment, and particularly when it comes to baker. What we see, first of all, is that prices are increasing. Energy cost is increasing, raw material cost is increasing, everything is increasing. So the tension on price has never been that high. The second thing is that more and more people are very concerned about food waste. When you go to bakeries sometime, or when I say bakeries, it's all kind of product. You see product going to the waste. This is less and less acceptable. First of all, because we are all concerned about not wasting food. But the second aspect, more trivial, is about finance. You are not going to produce a product to put it to the trash at the end. So we need to do something about that. The next thing we need to also take into account is that all the lab equipment we are using today for qualifying the flour, they were invented 100 years ago. Doesn't mean they are bad. It just means when they are born, the world was very different, and the type of flour was totally different. The type of wheat was totally different. So maybe we need either to adapt these tools or maybe to think about new tools more adapted to the current environment. And last but not least, this is very important, and this is increasing everywhere, and particularly since the COVID crisis. This industry is losing expertise. Bakeries, traditionally, we always found extraordinary people that can touch the dough, look at the dough, and they know how they have to handle the dough and change the process and make some adjustments. We still have these people, but they are disappearing. Why? Because first of all, some of them, they are just retiring, and other one, they want maybe to do something else. So we need, as a baker, we need to capitalize on this knowledge and use it before it's gone. Because the new generation, first of all, if they stay here, it will take a while for them to achieve the same level of expertise. And the second thing is that most of the time, young generation, they do not stay 10 years, 15 years, 20 years at the same place. They want to change. So it will be very difficult to rebuild this knowledge if it's totally lost. The other fact is the traditional way we are looking at flour quality is really finding limits. We can find in different product like here, formulation for white sandwich, and we should be having a protein range between 10 and 11.5. That's kind of thing we hear many times. Oh, you want to make a pizza, you need this kind of data. You want to make a cookie, oh, you need to use this kind of data. This is theory. The practice is what I'm showing you here. We have the protein here, and we have the slice area here. So we can see that for almost the same level of protein, which is the same as here, you can have a very low bread, very low volume, and here you can have a fully developed bread. So it's not only looking at some parameters. First of all, maybe we need more parameters, but just finding or looking at one piece of the puzzle is not enough, and it can be extremely misleading. Because this explains why you can be within the specification, 10 to 11, but yet your product will be different. The fact is, and that's a very important one, is that between the flour we are analyzing and the final product, there is a lot of things happening. When we see here what strengths to choose for a good pizza dough, okay, so you have here values with W value, which are measured with the alveograph from Chopin. But these kind of advices about what is a good flour, they do not integrate many differences between plants. Because if we want to go from this to this, first of all, we need to understand the final product, because the perception of quality is very different if you speak about the same product in France, in the US, in UK, or in China or Argentina. We're all speaking about bread, but our perception and what we are expecting from bread will be different. So we need to take that into account. Other things we need to take into account is this process includes many variables. All the baking plants are not the same. The formula, the recipe will be different. The process, the tools we are using will be different. The temperatures, the times for proofing, for instance, and the knowledge of the people on the line, they will be different. So all of that will be impacting the final product, even if we are using the same quality of flour. So the idea really is that the flour quality should not be something like all the same for everybody. Flour quality should be specific to each baker, taking into account the process specificity, but also the final consumer preference. What does the customer want? Big volume, color, crust, cuts, what it is. So we need to define that. And defining this will help us better define which type of flour we need. So the good news is that we have solution existing that will benefit not only the bakers, but also the millers. What I often hear when I'm speaking about flour quality with bakers is that, no, but flour quality is not my problem. That's my miller's concern. Very bad answer, sorry. Because if you start like this, you are not integrating the fact that flour is a very efficient or a very active ingredient in your formula. And if someone has problem because the flour is not good, it's not the miller only, it's the baker first. So you need to be able to really define for the miller what is a good flour. The millers, of course, they are expert in flour. They can do a lot of things. They can blend wheats, they can add additives, whatever. But they are blind if they don't know where to go. So if you tell them, I need a flour between 10 and 11% protein, they will provide this flour. But we've seen this value will not ensure you, baker, to have a proper result. So the idea is to learn from the process. Learning from the process, observing what is good for you, not for the other one, for you, and define what should be a well-adapted flour. Using new tools, for instance, we have a great tool for doing that. It's called the Mixolab because it's really screening all the quality of the flour. But I'm not able to say someone, this is the flour you need. But if we look on the process, I can tell you what a good flour should look like. Once you get that, you can communicate that to the miller. And you say, Mr. Miller, this is the flour which is really matching well with my process. And for the miller, it is a gain because he has a much better defined target. So flour quality is not only a miller's problem, it's also a baker's problem. The solution is to reverse, not to say looking for the flour to the final product. We are going to look from the final product to the flour. And the key objective of what I'm going to show you is to remove subjectivity. We need to know, we need to have numbers, figures, because with numbers, we can improve. And the first thing is to make it simple. Every type of product we are doing, we have three main phases. The first one will be to mix flour and liquid, because we are not just eating flour. We need to make a dough. When we are making a dough, we are making a big bulk of dough, okay? Several kilos. Last time I was in a plant, it was 1 ton. So of course, we are not going to eat 1 ton bread. So we need to shape the dough. We need to make it little to give it a shape. And then this will impact, and the flour quality will impact how the dough is performing during this stage. And the last but not least, we are going to step the final product. For most of us, it will be about baking. Many are using frying, or it can be freezing, or it can be steaming. But at a certain time, we will go from the dough to the final product. That's the product we can eat, and the product we go to the supermarket or to the shop for buying. So the most important part will be this one. We need to define what is a good product, okay? And this is in terms of data. Is it the color? Is it the size, the volume, the crispiness, the softness, the shelf life? All of that, we can put numbers. We can define what is good for the customer. For some customer, crispiness would be important, very important. For other one, it will be volume. So here we have the last stage. You see, baking, steaming, frying, freezing. The dough characteristics just before that are extremely important. How do we control this today? How do we control the dough? How do we control the final product? For the dough, most of the time is by touching the dough. Let's go back to the expert. Remember, this expert, they are leaving the companies. And the other thing is, how do we define the right product? Who is going to tell us the process is working well? So we have now, with the technology, we have wonderful tools like these ones. These ones are systems which are part of KPM Group, but they are looking at your process, and they can look at every single product on your production line and tell you about the size, about the height, about the color, about the number of seeds you have if you are doing hamburger buns. So you have reliable data. And something which is critical, one time someone told me, and it always stayed in my mind, what I can measure, I can improve. If you cannot measure, and if you are not sure how your process is performing, how can you improve? Seriously. So the first thing, that's why objective bread measurement, which we are doing here, objective bread measurement, will be helping us defining what is a good flour. Because once we know how we are performing with real numbers, we can start understanding how the process is working. Here we have one process where we go from the dough here, and then after we are going to shape in a very different type of different size, different shapes, just like this, that the pretzel. I love this machine. But here we can have issues. Bakers, they know what kind of issues they have. Is it about consistency of the dough, stiffness, elasticity, extensibility, strength, whatever? They know what they want to have. They know what they want to avoid. Okay, so we need to be able to see how it performs at line. So that's for the mechanical part. If you are proofing, you're adding one stage. This stage will be where the bakers will refer to as, okay, I have the gas, we are losing gas, the porosity is too high, the development of the dough is not good, the stability of the dough is not good during proofing, it was good, and when I move the dough, it's collapsing. What is causing that? Because knowing what is causing the problem will help you better define what is the good flour quality. Okay, so the question is always, how do you control that? And the answer is always the same. Most of the time, we're controlling it manually. Okay, so the final product visually and the dough manually. It is too subjective. We can do better than that. And doing better than that is, for example, here we can place on the line, we can place a product inspection system that you can see here. It will be able to look at every single one of your product and give you numbers, how it is performing, what is the average color, what is the maximum, what is the minimum, what is the size, what is the age, everything. You know exactly how your process is performing. Eventually, you can also add a system which is rejecting the bad ones. So you will add another information. You will know how many products are not fitting your objective and what the customer is expecting from you. That's the starting point. When we have this information, we have tools like this one here. I'm going to show you here. Tools where you can take the dough from the production line and drop it into the machine, and you know how the dough look like. And you can do that at several stages. So you are going to make a mapping of your process, understand your process. What we are doing here, we are learning from the process. And we can link the dough behavior with the final product performance. So now let's go one step back or further. We can analyze the flour that can be used for producing this dough, which has certain product performance. So with that, we are closing the gap, and we can make a great link between final product performance, dough performance, and flour quality. If I have that, I have this little graph here, and this I can communicate it to the miller and say, Mr. Miller, this is the flour which helps me having the right dough, not giving me stickiness issues, and helping me having the best product possible. So the conclusion is, first of all, this world is rapidly evolving. So what I see, sometimes people, they are always doing the same thing, that's a kind of habit. We have always done like that. Yes, maybe, but the world is changing. Customers are asking for more consistency, more new product, more new things. So maybe it's time to adapt. The classical way of building specification is really full of limits. Why? Because it only looks at the flour and it has no idea how this flour is going to be processed. Of course, we have big ideas. We know flour for buns will be different from the flour from biscuits. But for two people doing buns, and this is real experience, they are not going to use the same flour because process, recipe, everything will be different. So the new approach is really gaining every week. I am visiting customers and I am discussing with them, and it's really gaining momentum. Why? Because the objective measurement of the final product is a key step. Today, most of the time, it is done by someone looking at the product and removing the product. And sometimes you wonder why they have been removing this product and not this product. And it is human. So humans, sometimes they are acting some certain way, and another day they can be acting differently. And then from one person to another, the perception of color, of size, whatever, will be different. So if you can have an objective way of measuring that will be a first step toward improvement. We need to quantify objectively the number of good and bad product manufacturing. And then we need to understand what is, during the process, what it is that makes that the final product is not good or good. Because it's not only the flour. Flour is always the first thing we blame, but it's not always the flour. Maybe it was something on the process, it was something on the recipe. Okay. So if you know your flour was consistent and corresponding to a well-performing flour, if there is an issue, knowing how the dough is performing online can really help you. So you really have the 3 steps. Final objective measurement of your process performance, and measurement of your raw material, not only looking at very narrow information, but with tools that will really give you a lot of information. Just one point. Most of the specifications are based on protein. Remember, the flour you're using is 70% starch. So we should pay attention to starch and interaction and everything. So if you have a tool which is giving you, like the Mixolab, giving you all the information from protein, starch, interaction, that puts you in way better condition to set efficient specification. And last but not least, not only this strategy will help baker improve, but it will also help millers to produce flour which are more adapted to a certain baker. So the relationship between the miller and the baker will be improved. There is nothing worse for the miller than making all these efforts to get into specification and still having people complaining, because remember, 96% of the baker complain they experience issues, but they are still having or receiving flour within specification. So this is not a satisfactory situation, and certainly we can do better. So that's what I wanted to share with you, and I would be very happy to answer any kind of question, or if you want to contact me, much more than welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Arnold, for joining us here at Bakery Live.
Thank you.
Why did you want to talk about this topic in particular?
That's an interesting question. Why? That's a good question, because I have been working in this industry for maybe more than 30 years, and working on flour quality control. And most of this time I have been working with millers. And some years ago, we have been acquired by a company which is called KPM, which is here. So now we are part of a group where we have several business working together. And we are doing NIR, we are doing water analysis, we are doing NIR online. And one of the things in one of the companies, they are doing vision system. And in fact, the system I showed you, that we are measuring the size and everything, suddenly came to our reach. And this has been totally changing the way we have been seeing, because that's where we started to say, hey, if we can make the link between what we are observing at the end and what we, flour specialists, are observing at the beginning, that would change our life. That will change our life not only for us as flour experts, because it was, even for us, very, very frustrating. Sometimes the people were saying, yes, I'm doing your analysis and I'm good, and they are still complaining. But at the same time, for the vision, you can see if it's working well or not, but you don't really know why. So it's also frustrating, because you see it's not performing as you expect, but why? So now we are really, and that's something unique that we are offering and working, we can really understand how we go from the flour to the dough, how the dough is processed, and how does that impact the final result. And it's really exciting, in fact, because it's totally changed the way we are not. It's like, we have been working a little bit in the fog. So we were doing things, but never 100% sure. And now it's not 100%. But the chances of finding the right answers or putting the right specification are increasing every day. And the more information we get from the process, the more we learn and the better we are. So it's very exciting, not only for us, but also for the bakers using that, and also for the millers providing the bakers.
Absolutely, it is exciting. What struck me about your presentation, Arnold, was simply talking about all the technologies that are at our disposal. In your opinion, are bakers becoming more data-focused, data-driven? Are they asking for more information on the process?
Yes, that's the feeling I have. During most of my career, there was a very, very strange discussion. We want to be innovators, and we always strive to come with new solutions and with new ideas. And when we were presenting that in shows, for example, if we're speaking with a miller about a new solution, most of the time the miller will say, oh, it looks very interesting, but my baker is not asking for this. So maybe I should wait. And when we were visiting the baker was saying, okay, is my miller using it? Because he has to use it. He's making the flour. So it was like a kind of status quo that nothing was really changing. because everyone was expecting the other one to move. And one of the reasons is because we were not sure it's really going to make a difference because of this fog which was surrounding us. But today it's really different. Today we go to the bakeries and we discuss with the bakeries and we tell them, how about finding a way of giving better specification to your miller? And for you, that would be receiving flour, which are complying all the time. And that would be great. So where do we start? So first of all, we start by learning from the process. And that's also something very different. I have seen so many times, and certainly I did it myself, but I have seen so many times people explaining to the other one, you are making a cookie, so you should have a flour with this amount of water absorption. Well, a lot of numbers that we are finding in the books. Again, this is giving you a rough idea, but when you are telling that, you are not helping the people in front of you, because first of all, they can find the same information in the same book. And secondly, you are not taking into consideration is specificity. And that's really interesting. We are working right now in Italy with a plant, and they are doing a certain kind of product. I cannot tell you why, but same flour, same line. They have different recipes according to the different customers. And we can follow how the recipe is impacting the results. But not only we are looking at, we are putting numbers. And these numbers will be very helpful. So that's really the trend we are seeing, that the bakers more and more, they want to have numbers, because before they had no numbers, they had experts. And remember, these expert people, they are slowly going away. So we need to find a way of looking forward to the future. That's basically what we are doing.
Certainly, there are a lot of challenges to address in this industry. Something I think an important point that can be gleaned from your presentation, Arnaud, is this point about collaboration, making sure that the right people are talking to one another. And sorry, I'm just gonna start again, Sam.
Again, I'll take a coffee.
So, I think an important point to be gleaned from your presentation is this point about collaboration, making sure that people are talking with one another. How, from your experience, how do the relationships between millers and bakers vary throughout the world? Have you seen varying forms of close collaboration and other forms of not so close collaboration?
Yeah, definitely. It not only it varies from areas or countries to countries, it also varies. I'm sorry to say that it varies with the baker size. If you're a baker which has the capacity to purchase tons and tons of flour, you are more powerful than one which is purchasing less flour. So and you can be more demanding in terms of quality. So that's the first thing we see. The other thing is that in some countries, it looks like the bakers, they have no choice. They have to use the flour that comes from the miller, because the miller said, okay, you want a flour for cookie? This is the flour for cookie. Okay. So, and if it's not working, it's not my fault, it's your problem. And typically, this is where we have no communication. And you know, I was mentioning these tools, laboratory tools we have been using for more than 100 years. We need to remember that when they were invented, it was for the millers. It was not for the bakers. Because at this time, the bakers, they were doing bread, and eventually it was way less industrial, so they can still handle the dough. But the millers, they were using these tools because they needed a way to understand their flour. But the level of understanding of the millers, even if it's good, it's always lacking the relationship with what is happening online. So that's where the communication and you use this word, and I think that's the key word in what we are doing. It's communication. It's communication between the baker and the miller, and try to find what is the best tool. Because, you know, everybody is measuring protein. Protein is very important, but protein is just a little tiny part of the solution. So if we focus a lot on protein, it can be very frustrating because we are within the target and it's still not working. Why? Because we are just looking very, very little part. So that's the first thing. We need to understand what is really impacting the process and the final product, and say to the miller, okay, this is impacting, this is what we need to focus on, and this is the value I would like. Because today, most of the time, it is the millers telling the bakers what they need. There is a very I'm doing that all the time. When I'm with bakers, I'm just asking the bakers, okay, you have specification. Who built the specification? Who decided that what is good for you is having a flour with this specification and these numbers? And most of the time, the people around the table just look at the other one and nobody knows. It was there for years and years. And most of the time, this was given by the millers, because the millers, they had a certain expertise they have an expertise on these tools. And they say, okay, this is the flour you should have, but it's not necessarily adapted. So that's the first level of communication. There is a second one, which is very important. And when I started working with the bakery, that was maybe the most impacting thing for me. It is a lack of communication between laboratory people, quality control people, and production people. In many, many, many plants, they don't speak to each other. So the quality control, they analyze the flour, they are within specification, they accept the flour, and then after it goes online, doesn't work well. And so the process people say, okay, the guy from the quality, they are useless because that's another bad flour. But the people from the quality control say, no, the flour was good. It's just you don't know how to work with it. If we start making these people communicating, I say, okay, this is what we have been observing in the lab. This is what we have been doing in the production. We might be in a position to say, okay, maybe what we are looking on the lab does not prevent us from having problems. So maybe find something. And that's exactly what we are doing right now.
Thank you. I think what is very interesting as well about your presentation here at Bakery Live is talking about the past and talking about how that shouldn't have as much influence now that we're looking to the future, and just adapting our processes and adapting our specifications, for example. I think with current trends in bakery, such as, clean label, natural, gluten-free, there is perhaps more pressure on quality for baked goods because they perform very differently. Have you observed that?
It's very challenging. It's very challenging, and at the same time, it's very exciting. Because of course, all these trends you have been mentioning, some of them they look like they will not last, and other one they are lasting long. I remember when we started speaking about gluten-free, everybody was saying, "Yeah, okay, it just lasts a couple of years," and it's still there and it's growing, and we all understand why it's growing. And of course, it has been totally changing the way we are looking at quality, because again, all the tools we are using right now, most of them are very focused on protein. At the first thing, if you look for photograph, extensograph, alveographs, and a lot of these graphs, it's all about protein. And certainly, you say to the guy, "Now, okay, you just remove the protein, no more gluten." So you totally change the way the system works. So you need to find something else. You need to find new tools. You need to adapt your tools. And we have been very successful in the gluten-free industry because we had the tool which is looking a lot about starch properties and all of that, because then starch becomes important. We are working currently on the keto flour. That's also totally crazy. I mean, if you try to make a keto bread, it's totally different, and the formula is very, very different. We have been working, and currently we are working a lot on pulses addition. You want to add more protein, so you have pea flour, lentil flour. So how does that impact your process, your dough? You need to know that. And the last but not least also, which is also very important, is whole wheat. If we take something as simple as whole wheat, we all know when we are baking whole wheat flour, it behaves very differently from a white wheat flour. So we need to understand. And if you need to understand, maybe that's where you need to start thinking about either using the tools, traditional tools, use them differently because you need to adapt, or maybe use new tools. And that's very interesting, because during years and years and years, it has been white flour. And today,
it's totally different processes, different formulas. And yeah, we are happy to have these tools. And so there are two things. First of all, when you're developing the new product, you need these tools to better understand. But then after, when you process them, we can use the same strategy all the time. And that's what also makes it very exciting. That we can see today we are applying that to bread, cookie, cracker, noodles, whatever. Because in fact, the way of thinking and the way of looking at the three steps, final product, dough, and flour, is the same. But we need to have adapted to some tools. They are just not adapted for this new trend. So that's very challenging and very interesting.
I can imagine after 30 years, Arnaud, you're still being surprised working in this sector.
Yeah, I'm still excited to see that, because it's, and particularly over the last 10 years, 15 years, it has been really changing. And we go out a little bit of our routine and do as always. Now we are really facing big challenges, complicated from industrial point of view, but also complicated from theoretical point of view sometimes, because we everything we learn at school, we need to revise it totally, because it's new system, and that's what makes it very exciting.
Well, thank you for taking the time to speak with us at Bakery Live, Arnaud. I am sure that our attendees will find some real value in what you've spoken about, and hopefully take stock of some of the points you made around communication.
Hopefully. And thank you for having me. That was really a pleasure.